Chazal tell us, Mishenichnas Adar Marbin B'Simcha, when the month of Adar comes in, we increase our joy. And as we are approaching Purim in just a few days, and many of you might hear this on Purim, I do have to say that, in a sense, our great, great joy is marred by a tragedy that has happened in the Ohr Somayach family, and really a tragedy for Klal Yisrael, and that is the death of our beloved, truly beloved, Rosh Yeshiva and founder, Rav Nata Schiller, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, after a very heroic struggle of around 3 years, in which he was very debilitated, and in spite of the setbacks, he came back with a great deal of courage and resolve. He finally returned his soul to his Maker on the Shabbos of Parshas Zachor, and the Levaya was the Motzei Shabbos, buried on Har HaMenuchot. In many, many ways, the sadness is so overwhelming that in some ways it is difficult to concentrate on Purim. But you know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu commands us. There are times to rejoice and there are times to cry. And in the life of the Jew, we have to combine both the crying and the mourning, and the simcha and the joy. And indeed, I wanted to share with you a thought that is both connected to Purim and connected to the demise of our great and beloved Rosh Yeshiva, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. This Shabbos, the very Shabbos the Rosh Yeshiva died, or this past Shabbos, was Parshas Zachor, that commemorates the mitzvah of remembering the evil of Amalek and committing ourselves to destroy Amalek. But the Svarim HaKadoshim tell us that although Amalek was a specific nation, which we may or may not be able to identify, there is also a spiritual dimension in which one is supposed to eradicate the Amalek within them. There is an important idea in Chassidus and Kabbalah that our vulnerability to the Amaleks outside of us, who try to destroy us, is only because there's an element of Amalek within us that makes us vulnerable to the Amalek outside. So one of the most important ways that we destroy the Amalek on the outside is by endeavoring to eradicate the Amalek on the inside. But what is the inner Amalek that makes us vulnerable to the outer Amalek? In truth, if you look at Tanakh, you actually see 3 different occasions when Amalek attacked us. The very first time was right after we left Mitzrayim. Amalek was the very first nation that attacked us. Chazal explained that the whole world had a great fear of the Jewish people. They saw the 10 Makos. They saw the splitting of the Red Sea. They didn't dare raise a hand against Klal Yisrael because they thought there was no chance at all they could possibly succeed. Amalek was the very first nation, as Chazal put it, that jumped into the boiling hot bath. And they got burnt, and they got scalded, but they cooled off the bath for the next guy. So that was the first encounter with Amalek. The second encounter with Amalek was 40 years later. After Aaron HaKohen died, the clouds of glory that had enveloped and protected the Jewish people dispersed. Remember, the Gemara in Tainus explains that there are 3 precious gifts. The man came in the merit of Moshe. The traveling water well was in the merit of Miriam, and the clouds of glory are in the merit of Aaron. When Aaron died, the Ananei HaKavod scattered, and we were thus vulnerable. And we were attacked by a nation that the Torah describes as Canaanites. But in fact, as Rashi explains in the name of the Medrash, these were actually Amalekites, but they disguised as Canaanites because they were afraid that Moshe Rabbeinu would daven, as he did the first time, that they should be defeated. And they understood that prayers are very nation-specific, so if Moshe would pray, defeat the Amalekites, they would be defeated. But if they disguised as Canaanites and Moshe would pray, defeat the Canaanites, they wouldn't be defeated because, in fact, they were Amalekites. So the Amalekites disguised themselves as Canaanites, hoping, therefore, to be invulnerable to Moshe Rabbeinu's prayer. Moshe Rabbeinu, however, suspected that there may be some type of disguise here, so he prayed in a very generic way, Hashem, deliver the nation to me, whomever they are, whether Amalekites or Canaanites. So that's the second time. The first time is right after we left Mitzrayim. The second time is after the death of Aaron HaKohen in the 40th year of the desert. The third time is the story of Esther itself. Haman is called throughout the Megillah Haman HaAgagi, Haman, the descendant of Agag. Agag was the king of Amalek that Shaul HaMelech was commanded to kill. Shaul spared the life of Agag, and although Shmuel HaNavi killed Agag shortly thereafter, in the brief amount of time Agag impregnated a woman who became the ancestor of Haman, the Agagite. Now, we don't count in this Shmuel waging war against Amalek because that was us going after them. But the three aggressive times that Amalek came after us was when we left Mitzrayim, when Aaron HaKohen died, and many centuries later in the story of Purim. One might posit the following. If one examines these three encounters with Amalek, one can identify in each one a unique aspect of the inner Amalek that makes us vulnerable to the outer Amalek. Let us take the first encounter after we left Mitzrayim. The Torah tells us that Amalek attacked us in an oasis that is called Refidim. Refidim, on one level, is the name of a place, but Chazal say it also exemplifies an attitude. Refidim is a contraction of Rafu Yedehem Min HaTorah. Their hands were weak with the Torah, which is an idiomatic expression. Actually, it does not translate that well into English. That refers to a sense of complacency, indifference, lack of passion. That Amalek attacked us because in our connection to spirituality and ruchnius in Avodas Hashem, even if we go through the motions of doing things correctly, we do so with a lack of passion, a lack of excitement, a lack of simcha, a lack of enthusiasm, a coldness of the heart. Rav Tzadok locates that in the word Asher Korcha, made you cold. Amalek has power over us when we are cold in our Avodas Hashem. So the first Achilles heel that we see in the first encounter is a coldness, an indifference, a lack of passion in Avodat Hashem. We then come to the second encounter with Aaron. Now we know Pirkei Avos praises Aaron as the paradigmatic Oev Shalom, V'rodev Shalom, the lover of peace, the pursuer of peace. Oev es Habrios, one who loved all of God's creations. Umakarvan LaTorah, and through that love brought them to Torah. Once again, I could just add, this too was the great characteristic of our beloved Rosh Hashiva. Now, when Aaron died, if Aaron represents Achdus, unity, Avas Yisrael, love of every individual, seeing their value, seeing their worth, when Aaron died, there was a yerida, there was a decline in that Avas Yisrael. There was a rise in the Sinat Chinam. And that is the second Achilles heel that made us vulnerable to Amalek. Because after all, Amalek is very closely related to us. Amalek is the son of Eliphaz, who is the son of Esav. In a sense, we have a brotherly relationship with them. Why should the brother Amalek hate us? It's a brother to brother. But the answer is midah keneged midah. We do not love our brothers the way we should love our brothers. That makes us vulnerable to the hatred of a brother, the hatred of Esav, which becomes the hatred of Amalek. Thus, encounter number 1 says that the inner Amalek that we need to eradicate is complacency, indifference, and coldness in Avodas Hashem. And encounter number 2 tells us what we need to eradicate is the hatred and polarization between Jews and replace it with love and concern and compassion. We now come to encounter number 3, which is the Purim story. And in the Purim story as well, we don't always realize this. We were very close to being annihilated. It was not a done deal that we would be saved. In Shemayim, there were enormous prosecutions against Am Yisrael. And in the Purim story, we actually see that we were guilty of both of the flaws that makes us vulnerable to the negative power of Amalek. The flaw of complacency and lack of passion, and the flaw of sinat chinam and lack of avas Yisrael. Let me take the second first because it's a bit more explicit. When Haman HaRasha wants to make his case to Achashverosh that the Jewish people are not deserving of being saved, so like a good lawyer, the very first thing that he says is, Yeshno Am Echad, there is a nation, Mefozar Mefarad Beino Amim, who is scattered and dispersed among all your nations, V'daseyim Shonos Mikalam, and their laws are totally different. Now, on the simplest level, this is a conversation between a human man called Haman and a human king called Achashverosh. And Haman is simply making the point that because the Jews are dispersed and they're not concentrated in one area, it's fairly easy to finish them off because they don't have enough of a critical mass to be able to fight. That is the Pashut Pshat. But we know from the Zohar a very important idea, that although the name of Hashem is not mentioned in Megillat Esther, every time it says Melech, it is a subtle allusion to the Melech Malchei Amlachim, to the King of all kings, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So even a phrase, Haman says to Melech, has two connotations. The lower connotation is human Haman says to the human Achashverosh. The deeper connotation is the spiritual power of Haman, which is the evil of Amalek, is making an argument to Hashem. Now, these two levels of interpretation will directly influence what we mean by Mefozar Mefarad Beino Amim. At the lower level, it is, as I said before, a simple statement that we are dispersed. But in the heavenly level, Amalek is mekatreg. Amalek is prosecuting us in Shemayim by saying we are mefozar u'meforad. We are separate, we are disunited, we are polarized within ourselves, within our own nation, and therefore we are undeserving of being saved. And that is why, as soon as Mordechai tells Esther about the news of this Gezerah, Esther's response when she proclaims her fast is Lech Kenosis Kol HaYehudim, go and gather all the nations, all of the nation, all of Israel. Bring them together. Because if our weakness is Mefozar Meforad, our strength will only come by Kenisa, by bringing everybody together. So that's, you see, the first flaw, in the Chumash it was the second flaw, but the flaw of sinat chinam and lack of avat Yisrael. But we also see in the story of Purim evidence of the first flaw, a complacency, an indifference, a lack of enthusiasm in mitzvahs and avodas Hashem. The Gemara in Maseches Megillah quotes Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai that says that one of the reasons, at least the first reason that he gives, why the Jewish people were deserving of destruction is because they enjoyed the party of Achashverosh. They attended the party and they got pleasure from it. And that would have been enough of a reason to be deserving of death. The Sfas Emes asks the obvious question. What was the worst thing they did at the party? They ate treif, they ate non-kosher food. Yeah, that's a sin, and that's a serious sin. But you don't get the death penalty for eating not kosher food. If the only problem was they ate at this party, why would they be chayav misa for eating at this party? The Sfas Emes says, very beautifully, that the Gemara does not say they're chayav misa because they ate at the party. The Gemara says they're chayav misa because they got pleasure from the party. Why is that significant? Why did Achashverosh make this huge party the third year of his reign? The Gemara in Megillah explains that it was known even to the non-Jews of the ancient world that the exile after the Churban of the first Beis HaMikdash was only supposed to last 70 years. And after those 70 years, the Jewish people would be redeemed. The problem was it was not clear from which point do you start counting the 70 years. And the cheshbon is complicated. I can't get into all the details. But Achashverosh made a mistake. He started counting the 70 years from an earlier point than he should have. And he concluded that the 70 years were up by the third year of his reign. And the reason he made a party is that if God told the Jewish people he would redeem them after 70 years, and the 70 years have come and gone, and the Jewish people have not been redeemed, that means Hashem changed his mind, or Hashem reneged. Hashem is not going to redeem him. So this was a party that was celebrating the fact that according to his mistaken calculation, there will not be a Beis HaMikdash, there will not be a return to Eretz Yisrael, there will not be a Geula. Things will stay exactly as they are. And that is what the Jewish people enjoyed. They enjoyed the idea, Baruch Hashem, we're happy in Shushan, we're happy in Golas, we're happy in Persia, don't need Mikdash, don't need Eretz Yisrael. What is that? But coldness, indifference, complacency, sitting on your laurels, not striving for something deeper and something greater and something more spiritual. So B'kitzur, if encounter number one after we left Mitzrayim, the Achilles heel was complacency and indifference, and encounter number two after the death of Aaron was sinat chinam and lack of avat Yisrael. The third encounter of Purim created a vulnerability based on both of those factors coming together. And that is why, when Chazal enacted the mitzvot of Purim, since Purim commemorates the downfall and defeat of the outer Amalek, we must incorporate in Purim those factors that destroy the inner Amalek. Sholach manos, matanos le'avyonim, the food gifts to our friends or people we would like to have a friendship with, gifts to the poor. What is that but building bridges of connection, friendship, togetherness, love? That is a tikkun for the inner Amalek of Mefozar Meforad, Bein Ha'amim. How are we misakein the complacency and coldness and lack of enthusiasm? This is by another aspect of Purim. Purim, we are told by Chazal, is a day of receiving the Torah out of love. At Sinai, God held a mountain over our heads, and he said, be makabel the Torah, that's great, and if not, I'll crush you. And however that's understood, and that again is a talk for another time, there was a certain element of duress, of compulsion, coercion, On Purim, we accepted out of love what we had previously accepted out of fear. Now, what is the difference between love and fear? When you do something out of fear, you do it without enthusiasm. You do as little as you need to get away with it. When you do it with love, you have enthusiasm, you have passion, you have geschmack. So everything about Purim is a tikkun for the inner Amalek, which enables us to defeat the outer Amalek. I'll just end that the Rosh Yeshiva, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, who again, I will say on a personal level, was my dear friend, my teacher, my Rebbe, in some ways, virtually a second father, realized that the Amaleks, the indifference, the complacency, and the lack of Avat Yisrael were the enemies of the Jewish people. And his whole adult life, more than 60 years, he fought to bring every single Jew that he could back to God, back to Torah. And in this way, he ignited passion and enthusiasm for Yiddishkeit in the hearts of tens of thousands of people who have families and grandchildren and yeshivas and their rabbis in their own right and authors of Sfarim. And in bringing back that enthusiasm, he also showed his great, unmatched love for every single Jew. So in many, many ways, perhaps it's appropriate that he was nifter on Parshas Zachar, because he truly waged the war against Amalek and achieved much victory. But the war is not over. The Amaleks have not been vanquished. And it's incumbent upon all and every one of us to continue the great work that the Rosh Yeshiva pioneered. And in that way, we will continue to be his Talmidim, even after his Petira. Freilich Purim, Purim Somayach.
Why do people want to come to Ohr Somayach? Why should I be interested in my Judaism? Inside every Jew, however far they become estranged from the beliefs, the traditions, the knowledge of our fathers and our forefathers, there's that little pintalid that goes on glowing and glowing and glowing. It never goes out.
We want to introduce Jews to something which is their birthright just as much as it is ours.
The objective of Ohr Somayach is to give someone the fuel to carry them in a dynamic Jewish life for the rest of their lives.
We live in a world which is full of uncertainty and insecurity. Ohr Somayach aims to give as many people as we can reach out to the opportunity to find something to hold on to.
Finally, there were other people who I could talk to and ask the questions that I had been facing for years. I could have Rebbeim at my fingertips who not only could help me literally with what I needed to know, but also could show me what it was like to lead a frum life, to have a kosher home.
Any question to be asked. The most foundational questions are encouraged and discussed.
I don't really have a Jewish background, and by don't really, I mean don't have a Jewish background. So I was nervous about getting to a yeshiva and opening up a page of Gemara in Hebrew, a language I didn't know. And I'm actually figuring out that even without a background, you can open it up, and in time, it works.
From complete beginner, novice, all the way through to the most religious, black hat wearing, like any yeshiva you'd find, and we all coexist under one roof, under the commonality that we're all Jewish.
You want to learn? This is the place. You want to grow? This is the place.
This is a short message to our friends at Ohr Somayach and to Jews, Yidden of the entire world, whoever they are and wherever they may be. We are approaching the beautiful, wonderful days of Purim. What is Purim all about? The Gemara teaches us in Masechet Shabbos Daf Peches, Hadar kibluhu b'yamei Achashverosh. In the days of Purim, Klal Yisrael, the entire people, once again took upon themselves Ol Malchut Shamayim. And once again, like standing at the foot of Mount Sinai, once again, Higdimu Naaseh Lenishma, rededicating and redevoting whatever they have to the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why? So we all know Purim is a day to remember, and it is one of the days in which we remember and commemorate miracles. Miracles that happened in the days of our forefathers. Purim is a day of gratitude. Like Hanukkah, like all the other festivals we have. It is a day in which we remember Rachamei Shamayim, going back thousands of years to the days of our forefathers. Purim is special. Purim is the only miracle we are to remember forever, every year, in every generation, in every home, in every household. It is the only miracle that was entirely in the realm of natural phenomena. Nothing was supernatural. Nothing was really out of the realm of nature. Shalosh Regalim, Pesach, Sukkot, Shavuos, we remember Yetziat Mitzrayim. Everything was supernatural. The 10 plagues, the splitting of the sea, the revelation at Sinai, Ananei HaKavod. Even Chanukah, we had the Nes Pachashemen, the little flask of oil that by nature could last for 1 day, and it actually lasted for 8. But Purim, nothing was supernatural. But everyone, just seeing the sequence of unbelievable events unfolding one after the other, they all recognized the hidden miracles of life. They all recognized Hashgacha Pratit, how HaKadosh Baruch Hu watches over us. So the Shulchan Aruch says, when you read the Megillah, you need to spread it out. Everyone should see the nace. And the question is, how do you see the miracle when you spread out the Megillah? My interpretation, my suggestion would be, when you read the Megillah, each section on its own, you don't really grasp the miracle. You need to see the big picture, the unbelievable events, and each and every time in which the Jews thought, what a terrible gzeira, what an unbelievable midat hadin, it became obvious and apparent that it is midat harachamim. Try to imagine that crazy king gathers thousands of women and girls to choose the most appealing of them all. And there's a huge competition. Shemen Amor Tamruke Hanashim. There was only one girl, that little tzedekis, Esther, growing up B'kedusha v'tahara, in the home of the greatest tzaddik in the world, in the home of the Gadol Ador. She asks for nothing, standing in the corner and saying Tehillim, davening to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And out of the thousands, she is the one Achashverosh chooses. That was an unbelievable tragedy, defying the laws of statistics. The Jewish people were broken and shattered. And then it became apparent that was the source of salvation. When Haman Rosha builds this skyscraper, Eitz Gevoya Chamisham Amo, you could see that pillar from every corner of the town. We could imagine Jews left their homes in the morning. They couldn't lift their eyes. They saw that huge pillar and they knew for whom it is designated. And they knew that Mordechai is going to hang up there. They left their homes every morning looking down. They couldn't lift their eyes. And then, what happened with that pillar? Haman and his 10 children. When the Pur fell on Chodesh Adar, Haman was happy. He knew that is the month of Moshe Rabbeinu's demise. Little did he know that that is the most lucky month for Jews. It is the month of Moshe Rabbeinu's birth. So what we experienced in Purim is not only a miraculous chain of events. We saw that Midat Hadin is transformed into Rachamim. And it became apparent, Hinei lo yanum v'lo yishan shomei Yisrael. And this is a message for the ages. It is a message that bears extreme and special significance in our times, after 16 months of war, so much pain, so much tragedy. But anybody that opened his eyes and his mind and his heart, we saw miracles. We saw miracles, and we saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu watching over us every step along the way. And when this war broke out, we were all in terrible despair. Nobody knew what to expect. We're 16 months later, and with all the pain and suffering, it is so apparent that HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us and watches us, watching over us every step along the way. Hinei lo yanum shomer Yisrael. And out of the heights of gratitude, Klal Yisrael once again kiblu ol malchut shamayim. There are two different ways in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings us back home after we have gone astray. Sometimes by pain and suffering and tragedy. In Parshas Ki Tavo, in Chumash Devarim, the terrible tochacha, tachat asher lo avadeta et Hashem Elokecha, b'simcha ubetuv lev mirov kol. Sometimes the HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings us back home by pain and suffering. And sometimes, when we see the manifestation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's love. Hodar kibluhu b'yamei Achashverosh, Rashi writes, Ma'ahavas hanes. My late mother was an amazing woman, wise, and she was a tzedekis. And she used to say, why is it twice a day, before we recite Kriya Shema, before we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, V'yohavto Hashem Elokecho, the bracha, the climax of the bracha before Kriya Shema is Haborchei ba'ami Yisrael bi'ahava, or Oyhev Amoy Yisrael. My late mother used to say, before we say V'yohavto Hashem Elokecho, how could one attain and achieve a high level of Ahavas Hashem, loving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when we understand and appreciate how much HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us? It is that much easier to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is what happened in the days of Mordechai and Esther. Hodor kibluhu b'yamei Achashverosh ma'ahavat hanes shenasa lehem. So let us all hope and pray, and let us all try to come back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to redevote and rededicate our lives, our resources, every fiber of our beings to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to His love, to His service, not by pain and suffering, but by witnessing HaKadosh Baruch Hu's love and by witnessing HaKadosh Baruch Hu's miracles. We are still under the impression, we are still mourning the passing of our beloved Rosh Yeshivat Ohr Somayach, Rabbi Schiller. Just this Motzei Shabbos, I participated in the Levaya. He, more than anyone else of our time, bears the unbelievable schus. He was a pioneer in Kirov, bringing tens of thousands of Jews, of a Kodesh Baruch Hu's kinderlich, Kodesh Baruch Hu's children, back home. This is what Purim is all about. So a happy Purim to all of you. A freilichen Purim to all of you. We should always be able to witness a Kodesh Baruch Hu's mercy, to see a Kodesh Baruch Hu's miracles, and rejoicing in those miracles, rededicate whatever we have to the service of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. We should all be zeicher b'kol b'yameinu to see the ultimate redemption. Ki ayin ba'ayin yir'u b'shuv Hashem Tzion v'niglo kvoid Hashem v'ra'or kabos ha'yachtav ki pi Hashem diber. We should be zeicher to see the ultimate miracle of Moshiach Tzidkeinu b'mheru v'yomeinu. Amen.
The guys come to here and they say one word, wow. And that's exactly what we wanted. And when you come into the hallway, you see this unbelievable, beautiful building and Batei Midrashim.
The beauty of the building, I must say, it took my breath away. I sat there for the first half an hour and I was having difficulty concentrating.
Everything here is unique and a piece of art.
The architecture is brilliant, the breadth of it, the airiness. It exalts you, brings you up.
It gives you a feeling of modern, of space, but yet it retains a certain traditional feel to it.
It's modern without being modernistic, a space where you just want to learn. I can't wait to get back into the Beis Medrash.
Our student body generally is coming from secular homes, upper middle class to upper class homes. I think that where they come to learn should be at least as beautiful as where they came from.
To walk into a building which is the equal or more than any equivalent building anywhere in the world gives the Talmidim a feeling of the importance of what they're doing in there.
Outside, the noises are loud, the lights are bright. We need to build an atmosphere which allows a person to feel comfortable despite what they might be used to. The new building has done that and so much more. The guys in Ohr Somayach, a lot of them have made really challenging life decisions to find their way here. These guys are heroes. And if anyone really deserves a nice, pristine, comfortable, spacious building, it's these guys.
There's a tremendous dynamic in the yeshiva now, a tremendous feeling of hischadshus, of newness, of expansion, of possibility.
We hope that Bezrat Hashem, this will continue to be a place to connect, and we'll have thousands of students, and we'll continue to do the goal of life, Kiddush Hashem.
It's a privilege to be here, to see how these guys are growing, how they transform. It's the most exciting place. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.